Good evening, everyone. Welcome back, future lawyers, to day 15 of our bar review. We are now 174 days away from the bar exam. Today, we will be tackling our final concept under general principles of remedial law, the doctrine of non-interference or judicial stability. Our guiding verse for today is Proverbs chapter 22, verse 28. Do not move an ancient boundary stone set up by your ancestors. In biblical days, moving a boundary stone meant encroaching on someone else's territory, inevitably leading to chaos. Today, we will learn how this exact same principle applies to our courts. A judge cannot cross the boundaries of a co-equal court and interfere with its cases. But before we dive into these territorial rules, let us first resolve the bar question I left you with back in day 11. Here is the question we left hanging in day 11. Congress passed a law reducing the appeal period from 15 days down to 10 days to speed up litigation. Attorney Santos filed on the 14th day based on the rules of court. Was the act of Congress valid? Let us reveal the suggested answer. Let us reveal the suggested answer using the Beer method. If you wrote this down, give yourself full points. First, the binary. No, the provision in the Speedy Trial Act of 2026 reducing the appeal period is not valid and unconstitutional. Second, the enabling law. Under the Constitution, the Supreme Court has the exclusive power to promulgate rules concerning pleading, practice, and procedure in all courts, and Congress cannot pass a law providing for the method and duration of appeals. Third, evaluation. Here, the legislative enactment of the Speedy Trial Act of 2026 encroaches upon the exclusive rule-making power of the Supreme Court by attempting to modify the 15-day appeal period provided under the rules of court. And finally, the resolution. Thus, the provision in the Speedy Trial Act of 2026 reducing the appeal period is invalid and unconstitutional. Direct, concise, and straight to the point. Now let us proceed to today's main topic. To properly digest the doctrine of non-interference, we will use our four-level analytical frame, the Beer Silos. First, the big picture, placing us at the conclusion of the general principles. Second, the essential pillar, where we define the core rule of judicial stability and its rationale. Third, the elemental principle, where we explore the strict exceptions to this doctrine, including how it applies to third parties and administrative bodies. And finally, the root level, looking at a specific Supreme Court ruling illustrating a blatant violation of this doctrine. For our big picture, we are officially closing the first major Roman numeral of our syllabus, the general principles. By strictly enforcing jurisdictional boundaries, the doctrine of non-interference acts as a vital mechanism that prevents overlapping authorities, avoids conflicting decisions, and ensures the orderly administration of justice. Moving down to our essential pillar, what exactly is the doctrine of non-interference, also known as the doctrine of judicial stability? Look at the powerful image on your screen. The two courthouses divided by an unbreakable force field. I want you to burn this image into your mind. It dictates that a trial court has absolutely no authority to cross that force field to interfere with the proceedings of a court of equal jurisdiction. Much less can it annul the final judgment of a co-equal court. For example, a branch of a regional trial court in a city cannot issue an injunction against the orders or judgments of another RTC branch in the same city. Why is this rule so strict? The rationale for the rule is deeply founded in the concept of jurisdiction itself. A court that acquires jurisdiction over a case and renders a judgment retains jurisdiction over that judgment to the absolute exclusion of all other coordinate courts. This exclusive control extends to the execution of judgment, all of its related incidents, and the conduct of the ministerial officers like the sheriffs, who are carrying out the court's orders. Without this rule, losing parties would just continuously file injunctions in neighboring branches, paralyzing the entire judicial system. Now we reach to the elemental principle. Are there any exceptions to this ironclad rule? Yes. Look at the image on your screen. The force field holds back co-equal courts, but a third party with their own shield can step right through. The doctrine does not apply when a third party claimant is involved. If a court orders a sheriff to seize the property of the defendant, but the sheriff wrongfully seizes property belonging to an absolutely stranger to the case, the stranger can file an independent action in another court to protect their property. No man should be prejudiced by a proceeding where he was never a party. Second, the doctrine does not apply if another court later acquires jurisdiction because of a legally sanctioned change of venue. Continuing our elemental principle, does this doctrine only apply between regular courts? No. The doctrine of non-interference applies with equal force to administrative and quasi-judicial bodies. If the law dictates that the decisions of a specific administrative body are appealable directly to the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court, it means that agency is considered co-equal with the regional trial courts in terms of rank and stature. Therefore, an RTC cannot issue an injunction to interfere with, stop, or review the decisions of these bodies. Before we proceed to our root level, let us hit the pause button. I want you to close your eyes for a brief moment. Try to actively recall the most important points we just covered in the essential pillar and elemental principle. What does the force field represent? Yes, the absolute rule that co-equal courts cannot interfere with one another. Now, who is holding the golden shield that can walk through the force field? Exactly, a third party claimant. Finally, does this rule apply to quasi-judicial agencies? Yes, if their decisions are appealable to the CA or SC, they are co-equal to the RTC. Open your eyes. It's an excellent recall. Let's lock these concepts in. Let us bring down this to the root level and see what happens when litigants attempt to manipulate this rule. Let us look at the 2021 case of MRTDC versus DraftWorks. In this case, a disputed a dispute regarding injunction was already filed and denied by the RTC of Pasig City. Unhappy with the denial, the petitioner filed a special civil action before the RTC of Makati City, asking the Makati judge to nullify the orders of the Pasig judge. The Supreme Court swiftly struck this down. The court held that the RTC of Makati obviously violated the doctrine of judicial stability. It is bereft of any authority to nullify the orders of the RTC of Pasig City, which is a coordinate and co-equal court. To wrap up our discussion today, here is a highly possible bar question that perfectly tests the general rule and its most important exception. Let us read it. A branch of the Regional Trial Court of Manila rendered a final and executory judgment in favor of Pedro against Juan. To satisfy the judgment, the Manila RTC issued a writ of execution and the sheriff levied upon a parcel of land allegedly owned by Juan. However, Maria, claiming to be the absolute owner of the levied property, filed a separate action for quieting of title and injunction before the RTC of Quezon City against Pedro and the sheriff. Pedro moved to dismiss the injunction case, arguing that the Quezon City RTC has no authority to interfere with the enforcement of the writ of execution issued by a co-equal court, the Manila RTC. Is Pedro correct? I will leave this question with you as your assignment. Apply what we just learned about the doctrine of non-interference and the rights of a third-party claimant. Draft your best beer-style answer, and we will reveal the suggested answer after 3 days. Before we officially end today's session, let us look back at our guiding verse from Proverbs chapter 22, verse 28. Do not move an ancient boundary stone set up by your ancestors. Respect the boundaries. In law, respecting the jurisdictional boundaries of courts ensures order and fairness. In your review, respect the boundaries you set for yourselves, your schedule, your study methods, and your rest times. Thank you for joining me on day 15. Keep up the momentum, and tomorrow we will finally begin our deep dive into jurisdiction.